What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Today I thought I would do a quick video here on the UltraHDMI mod by Retroactive. I just finally got my kit for that a couple weeks ago and got it all installed. So here we have the mini HDMI slit right underneath the multi-out for HDMI video. And I'll throw a couple of pictures in there too. I should have left it open so I could show it, but there's lots of other videos on the internet with people doing install videos and things like that. So I just thought I'd show some footage of some different games that I haven't seen. Alright, so here's just a quick picture. You can see the install and how it works. Everything runs to the video chip there, and then there are two connected to the two capacitors up above. And then here's a closer shot from UltraHDMI. This picture you can really see how precise the soldering has to be. So it's a little trickier than your basic soldering process, but if you have the correct tools, it's not too bad. Here I'm just going to go through a few games so people can take a look at the features and the options and everything. So here's the menu for the UltraHDMI. You bring that up by pushing LR right on the D-pad and the right C button at the same time. And then you get the menu here and all kinds of different options. You can fill the screen in different ways here, as you can see, but you're probably just going to want to keep it on normal since that's how most of the games were formatted for. You can change the overscan options here to fill the screen a little bit. Usually 20 fills it pretty perfect. Some games, when they're actually running, run a little smaller resolutions. So you might have to go to 30. And then we've got the scan line options here, which actually look really good. It's probably one of the best uses of scan lines I've seen if you're using it on an HD TV. And you can use the gamma boost there to increase the brightness, since the scan lines dim the picture a little bit. The scan lines don't show the greatest in direct capture footage on YouTube, but it looks fantastic in person if you like that kind of look. And then the CRT bloom just kind of stretches out the image by like a millimeter. You don't even notice it. But you can use that if you want it to look more CRT. You've got sharp pixels, which make everything razor sharp. You've got the de-blur options here, which is fantastic. You can see the difference. The N64 always has a blur filter enabled, and I don't know why they did that, because even on a CRT, it makes things look muddy and just kind of smeared and not that great. But the UltraHDMI can disable that, and it's most noticeable on 2D elements like text and things like that. You can see when I go back and forth, which I'll do again here, you can see the difference with that on or off. You've got your different resolutions here you can run it at. You can do a direct mode, which will give you the signal and resolution and everything straight from the game. It won't upscale it or do anything like that. And it will just give you how the game is running. It won't do any upscaling. And you can see, if you have an RGB modded N64, they look pretty good. But you can see through the HDMI how much sharper it is. And here, if you look here, when I toggle the blurring filter on and off, if you look at the text and look close at the guy's picture and the machines, you can see how much sharper it gets when you turn that filter to auto rather than off. So it makes a big difference, and it especially makes a difference in 2D games. 3D games, it really depends on the game, but 2D games, it's completely noticeable. And here you can see, if you look at the text when I go back and forth and look at his animation there, you can see it shift back and forth with the blur on versus the blur off. It's absolutely fantastic being able to disable that awful blur filter that Nintendo chose to use. So I'll just let some footage roll here so you guys can get an idea of how it looks, but everything responds really well. There's no lag, and depending on the game, it looks great.
Coast Tower! Watch your back! Yeah! Don't fight on left!
Now you can also see here the de-blur effect if you look at the text. That's why I keep doing this during text sections, because it shows it the best when you have text elements. Now, Mischief Makers is a great game for this mod because all those 2D games just look great. This game looks really sharp and really pops over the digital connection. It's probably one of my favorite games, and it looks phenomenal with this mod. Now here you can really see here, if you look at the pixel edges on the characters, it's very noticeable when the filter is enabled versus when it's off. And it just looks so much better when you can turn it off. Now, Killer Instinct looks absolutely phenomenal, especially over HDMI. It's amazing to look at this and see how good the games can look, because when you try to play Nintendo 64 on an HD TV these days with composite, S-video, and even RGB, you know, there's only so much you can do, and it just doesn't look that great. But I just think this version looks fantastic over HDMI, and it plays so well. If only the Nintendo 64's controller wasn't so damn goofy for a fighter. And I haven't played this in forever, so my skills are definitely not up to par. Now, as we come to one of my favorite games, Legend of Zelda, this one is a tricky one because, like a lot of the 3D games on this system, it doesn't seem to really matter what you do. Even with the HDMI mod, this game is rough looking at times. Specifically, when you're looking at things way off in the distance. When Link is close to the camera or characters appear close to the camera, it looks pretty good. But when he runs off in the distance, far away from the camera, it doesn't matter what you do. Things just kind of turn into a blurry, pixelated mess. And here, I'll enable the scan lines just for a minute so you can see what that looks like. Hybrid scan lines usually look the best, but there is a rare game where regular scan lines look better. And you can tweak everything about the scan lines. You can change their width and how they appear there if you go into the advanced settings. See, this all looks pretty good when the characters are close up. I mean, that looks great considering it's Nintendo 64. But when you are playing like in these segments and you get further away from the characters, things look a little more messy. And you can see when you're far away and the camera flies in, how things get a lot more clearer and more crisp as you get closer to the characters. See, this all looks pretty good, and everything looks pretty clear. But you'll notice as soon as he gets up and we switch to the overhead view, I mean, obviously he doesn't look as good there because he's not as close. Still looks decent. And you can see it better in this segment when you run off and start moving around. See, she looks kind of blocky when you're far away. Now it looks very good. And I'll just pause it here so you can take a look at the menu. Text in the menu looks pretty good. This game's a little fuzzy as it is, though, so that's just something the UltraHDMI isn't going to be able to fix. But the map looks really crisp. If you look at the map in the corner there, that looks incredibly razor sharp. And see, he looks good when you're close to him. But in some of the fixed camera segments in like the city and things like that, when he gets far away from the camera, it just doesn't look that great. And I mean, actually, even these segments, it looks okay when he gets a little ways away, but yeah, if the camera gets super far away, it just looks rough. And you can see the simple scan lines are a little lighter, makes the picture stay a little lighter, but the hybrid scan lines just look a little more natural. And Mystical Ninja is also a game that looks pretty good. Specifically this one because it's a side-scroller. It fares very well here on the UltraHDMI. So I think anybody watching this or who has watched some of my other videos probably knows the basics about the UltraHDMI, but it's basically a mod that cleanly scales to HD resolutions. So it's almost like having a little FrameMeister inside your Nintendo 64. Sort of. It's the general idea. So there's some other HDMI mods out there that are simply converting the analog signal to HDMI, and they don't actually upscale. So if for whatever reason you go to buy a modded system, people sell these on eBay. There's the UltraHDMI mod, which is this one, and then there's just regular HDMI modded ones that aren't as expensive. And those ones aren't actually upscaling the games. So that's a cheaper mod, and those ones really don't look all that great. So make sure you do your research if you go to order one so you don't end up getting screwed and getting a cheap garbage HDMI mod. because there are people that will specifically list them on eBay, and they know that someone's going to go on there and get confused and order one thinking it's an Ultra HDMI mod when it's not. We'll go ahead and turn those off so you can see it without the scan lines. I know a lot of people don't like the scan line look, and a lot of people do, so I like to flip back and forth here so you can get an idea of what both look like. It really depends on the game for me. Some games look really good with it, and some look really good without it, so it all depends for me. Now, there's a few games that do not benefit greatly from the deblur option. In fact, it makes some games look worse, and this is one of them, although it's debatable. Some people might like it with the blur on, and some people might prefer it with the blur off. Depending on the game and the graphical style used, turning the deblur function on kind of makes it look messier. Like here you can see shifting back and forth. Auto in this case means it's on. Or I'm sorry, auto means it's off in this case, and when I switch it to always, that means I'm disabling the blur. But you can see the shift in the picture there, and it's going to come down to preference in some games whether people like it on or off. But if you leave the option set to auto, the Ultra HDMI can detect in real time technically whether it's a good idea to have it on or off, and it will just activate it for you, and you don't have to even worry about it. And what Nintendo 64 video would be complete without showing Mario Kart 64? Even though I know there's been other people with the Ultra HDMI mod that have obviously shown this game because it's one of the best games on the system. But I figured I'd better throw it in and have it in here. This has always been one of my favorite Mario games, although I have started to like the newer ones better, simply for the one major flaw this one has, and that is the awful rubber banding when you're racing. Doesn't seem to matter how far ahead you get. The second and third place people usually stay right on your heels, and it doesn't matter how well you do, you can't get that far ahead, which is kind of stupid to have in a racing game. I get why they did it, but it just seems kind of silly to have it in a racing game, and for that reason, it's probably not my favorite Mario Kart game, but it's definitely one of the best, and it's still fantastic to play. But this one looks pretty good too on the Ultra HDMI, and having the blur disabled here makes things look really good. We'll throw some scan lines on here just for the hell of it. Most games do look pretty good with scan lines if you like the look, but I know it's not everyone's thing, so you can certainly play without them. And I do like showing this game just because the characters are nice and big, and I wouldn't say the blocky look is necessarily that great of a look, but it shows the clearness of the Ultra HDMI pretty nicely. And the best part about the Ultra HDMI is there is pretty much zero lag. So all these racing games or these games where you need to perform tricks in any of the snowboarding games, BMX, dirt bike games, whatever the case may be, it works great for all those. Fighting games especially, because everything reacts exactly when it should. I do have an RGB modded Nintendo 64, and that looks pretty darn good through the FrameMeister, but the Ultra HDMI still blows it away, obviously. And what video to show off this would be complete without Yoshi's Story? One of the most colorful games on the Nintendo 64. This one looks really good over the Ultra HDMI. This one looks pretty good even over my RGB modded one. It's just a very appealing looking game. And here we will look at the D-blur on and off. You can see it swap there. I did it kind of quick, but that's because I didn't want that guy to hit me. The only downside about going into the on-screen menu there is when you're navigating, it still functions, your controller still functions in the game too. So while you're navigating through the menus of the Ultra HDMI, your controller's still controlling the game. So you want to make sure you're not doing anything important in the game. See here, you can see when I go through the menu, Yoshi's still moving and doing stuff. So you just want to make sure you're not doing anything important so you don't kill yourself or do something stupid. And it's been a while since I've played this game, so you'll have to bear with me while I try and get my bearings here. And I can never remember how to get past these guys. Oh yeah, he's gonna follow me. Just go ahead and change these scan lines real quick. Oh, that's right. He's got an ass stomp, I think, doesn't he? I just love the look of this game. It looks fantastic. Yeah, there we are. Totally forgot he could even do that. And obviously we have to have Mario in here. This opening title screen demo is a really good spot to show off the Ultra HDMI because you can see how crisp and clear Mario looks. This is another one that's similar to Zelda, where everything looks very nice when you're close to your character, but the farther away you get from things, the messier they start to look with the way the Nintendo 64 games run. And I'll just run around here just to give you an idea of how everything looks. Again, controls really great. Everything is super snappy and responds instantly. Jesus. Get my ass kicked here. Turn on some scan lines here. Like I said, it looks a lot better when you're playing it in person. Scan lines don't always line up the best or come through perfectly over a compressed YouTube video. They look great in person if scan lines is your thing. And it definitely helps with specifically the Nintendo 64, since games can look a little rough. Scanlines help mask that a little bit and smooth things out and make it look a little nicer. But again, it depends on the game. Some games look fantastic without them. Yeah, see, you can see how sharp Mario looks when you're up close. And just for fun, we'll come up here and maybe take a long jump off. Alright, and lastly, I thought I'd show Dr. Mario 64 just because it's a 2D, and that's really where this mod shines. It's a shame that there's not more 2D games because they look really good with the UltraHDMI mod. And this game looks great with or without scan lines. But here you can see the blur on and off if you look closely. So if you're able to get your hands on one of the HDMI boards, I think they were going for like 150, something like that. And usually you have to get them installed from one of their authorized installers, where they have a list of installers they sell their boards to, and you can pay to get them installed. Otherwise, you can buy a board from an installer like I did, if they will sell you one. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, the mod is about a 5 or a 6 if you're proficient at soldering. It's not too bad if you have all the appropriate tools and everything. If you're a novice at soldering, the mod's like a 9 or a 10. So I would recommend having an installer do it if you haven't done a lot of soldering. I know a couple of people who've tried to do it and have ruined their N64s. So you can also buy some pre-modded ones on eBay, but those are usually selling for $400, $500, $600, $700, depending on what kind of console it is. Some of the Funtastic ones go for even more than that. I've seen people bid crazy amounts on them. It's a cool mod. Definitely worth it if you're a fan of the Nintendo 64. And even at $400 or $500, if you were able to get one pre-modded, if you really like the N64, I'd say it's worth it because it does make the games look really good. So that's about it for now. You can see other videos on YouTube of people actually doing the installs and things like that if you want to check out more. But I'll put some links in the description, and thanks for watching, everyone. We will catch you next time.